Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Richard, and I am here representing a media buying agency called The Specialist Works to talk, as it says on the screen there, about using TV to acquire, retain, and engage app users. So obviously, for all the app publishers in the audience, to get to a point where even using TV as an acquisition or retention tool means that you're doing pretty well with your game, and it's monetizing well enough to give you the confidence to be able to do this. A little bit of background about myself. So I've been working in mobile user acquisition for 4 or 5 years at a variety of mobile agencies in London. The mobile agency I was working for and heading up was bought by The Specialist Works. And I was introduced to the funny world of TV advertising. What became really clear to me was that what I call the traditional model of TV advertising, very, very much brand focused, very much not about data or results or performance, just wasn't fit for purpose for the kind of clients and the kind of world that I knew, which was mobile user acquisition. So let me just, very, very quick introduction. So as I say, we are a media buying agency headquartered in London, but we have offices in New York, in Germany, and as of this month, just opened an office in Beijing, which is very exciting for us as well. Our business is based around 4 divisions, so broadcast, or what we now call AV, which means linear TV, on-demand services, et cetera, mobile and digital, which is obviously my background, press and print and creative. As a company, we are now up to 150 and growing quickly. So the world of TV buying really is dominated by the big, huge global ad networks like WPP and Omnicom, et cetera, that have the vast majority of the clients with the vast majority of the budgets. We're a small fish in a very, very big pond, but we're trying to do things a little bit differently, which is what I'm here to talk about today. So there's a little pictorial map just kind of describing what I said. Those areas in dark red are where The Specialist Works actually has an office, and the areas in pink are where we're an independent agency, and we're part of a global network of like-minded independent agencies as well. Gives us a bit of scale and scope. Okay, so I don't know how much, if any, experience there is in the room in terms of using TV to drive mobile app acquisition campaigns, but certainly the 3 issues that are on the screen here, in my experience, are the biggest barriers to mobile app publishers actually taking the plunge and going into the big, scary world of TV. And as we go through this presentation, I'll try and kind of look at these points one by one. The first one is that television is extremely frustrating because of the lack of flexibility that you get with it. The second one is that TV agencies and the traditional TV agency model just aren't built to work with clients who are extremely performance-based. And then the third one is actually tracking the effect that TV has on your app business can't be done properly. So let's start with the first one. So TV is frustrating and inflexible. Well, I agree. I think it is. One of the reasons why I got interested in this space in the first place was that I was kind of running teams of mobile UA account managers, and we'd be working with clients who have really strict CPI targets, really strict CPA targets, and if we deviated and went slightly above them, even by a couple of cents, you know, we'd get a furious client on the phone kind of threatening to pause the campaign and withdraw budget, whereas at the same time, you know, this client would be dropping millions and millions of dollars on TV and seemingly not being able to even get an idea as to whether it was working or not, and it really used to wind me up. So this is why I kind of got into this space. So in terms of how TV is bought from a brand perspective, the whole thing is set up to be rigid. It's set up to be very inflexible because for the TV stations and for the media agencies themselves, getting into a level of detail whereby performance is analyzed and media buying is optimized just won't work with campaigns of that size. I call it set and forget, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about this. But this is very much, again, the traditional method of TV buying, in so much as once the campaign is planned and the strategy is decided, the campaign then runs kind of untouched, unhindered for the length of it without any real analysis or performance into it at all. Any changes to the media buying? So, you know, if you did decide that actually Saturday is on a good day for your ad to be aired, but Wednesday is, any changes can often be penalized from the TV sales house because, again, this rigidity to the buying structure is what works for them. And very often, agencies are forced to buy channels in groups rather than what works for the client. In some territories, the airtime price can rise in months. So if viewing figures are higher than is anticipated, clients very often end up being charged even more than they thought. And there's not the level of flexibility or bespoke buying available to agencies in key shows. So again, coming from a mobile user acquisition background, where you know, everything is about testing and learning and data analysis and optimization, this can be extraordinarily frustrating and can be one of the main reasons actually why mobile app publishers don't take that step. And the other thing as well is that the system, currently this system that I'm describing is set up to benefit the people that use it the most. So the big global agency networks that have huge deals with the TV stations where they are incentivized to use particular TV stations and particular networks in order to receive a large rebate, which obviously means that very often TV buying agencies are using channels and networks because it benefits them rather than necessarily benefits the client. But as I say, that's the traditional model. You know, there is another way, and quite a useful way, I think, of demonstrating that what I'm talking about today is through this chart. So this is kind of, as I say, the typical or traditional, if you like, approach to TV buying, whereby the brief is just about reach and frequency. So I have a product or an app that is primarily targeted at men aged 18 to 25, and I have $2 million with which to run a TV campaign. You go to a traditional TV media agency, and they will be able to put together a strategy and a plan for you that says, here's the list of programs, and here's the list of stations that will enable you to reach that male 18 to 25 audience. And at the end of the campaign, 60% of all the people in the country aged between 18 and 25 will have seen the ad at least twice. The client says, okay, that's fine. There's a huge gap between that decision being made and the campaign going live. The campaign then goes live, runs for however long it is, and then at the end of the campaign, they all sit down over a nice lunch or a nice glass of wine, and they decide whether it's going to work or not, whether they're going to do it again. The approach that certain kind of more nimble and mobile-focused agencies are taking is very, very different. So for first thing, the pre-booking deadline is tested. So rather than coming to a decision as to what all of the TV strategy will be 6 to 8 weeks in advance, there's a lot of the booking and a lot of the strategy is held off to the last minute, which enables a level of flexibility. There's a lot of need for relationships with the stations and the sales houses here to be able to have that. But what's really important, I think, is the fact that, again, bringing a digital or a mobile viewpoint into this is this kind of period of in-campaign optimization. So this is being able to know when and where you can make changes to the campaign based on the data and the results that you're seeing. This way, rather than the KPI of the campaign being reaching a certain number of people in a certain period of time, you can start looking at really valuable metrics such as cost per install, cost per acquisition, and things like that. Again, making it really, really kind of mobile and digital friendly. What it also means is that you get insight as to how the campaign is going all the way through. So, you know, if you do find out that Saturday is better than Tuesday because that's what the data tells you, or whether the morning is better than the afternoon, or down to the actual individual station and channel selection, you still have the opportunity to make the changes that you need to make. And this is the more agile approach that starts to make linear TV feel like digital. So of course, huge topic of conversation at the moment is the fact that actual linear TV, people watching TV broadcasts live as they go out within certain demographics, is declining, and that audience is either switching away from television programming at all or into new ways of consuming it. What you can do on top of what we're talking about here is obviously layer on things like programmatic video, layer on things like video on demand to be able to supplement that audience. Okay, so second point is that TV agencies, or certainly the agencies that buy most of the TV space, aren't response focused. Well, as I just said, there's too many agencies that think that as long as the ad is being seen by, broadly speaking, the right kind of people in the right kind of volumes, that their job is done. And this is the difference, really, and I've used a fried egg as a way of explaining this. Although that could actually work out cheaper in a cost per thousand basis, just to say that that audience is vaguely the people that we want, what I've found from working in mobile user acquisition is actually, if you can actually prove through your data and your attribution that the results are better by spending a little bit more time and effort and resource in ensuring that you're making the right choices and spending the money in the right way, then that focus does deliver a much better cost per response. Okay, so talked about how TV is bought, talked about the flexibility that we can bring into that process, about how we're trying to disrupt the kind of traditional TV buying model. It hasn't really changed in 50 years. Now, obviously, is kind of the interesting bit. How do we actually find out, and how do we know whether it's working or not? So, what plenty of people, obviously, in the mobile industry think is that every decision that they make from a mobile UA perspective is built on data and analysis and results, and how do you get that for TV? Well, the way that you do it is to analyze the information that's coming out of your organic data. So, leading attribution providers, so there's 4 of them there. Obviously, those solutions were all built and all exist to primarily judge the success of paid for mobile user acquisition campaigns. But there's also a ton of data that's being generated from the organic installs that take place that can be used as a way of evaluating the success or not of your TV campaigns. So there's lots of products on the market that are that exist as TV attribution and monitoring services. So we use, at the Specialist Works, one called Advanced, there's one called TV Squared, and there's plenty more as well. These things are built predominantly to measure the effect that TV advertising has on web campaigns, and they work really well because, you know, as you might imagine, in order to monitor the effectiveness of a web campaign, you put a tracking pixel on a website, and if somebody watches a TV ad with a call to action of a web URL, they pick up their phone or their tablet, they go to that web URL. As soon as they land on that page, the monitoring software is able to identify a spike in web traffic and then attribute that back to the TV spot. Pretty easy, pretty simple, cost per lead, cost per site visit, whatever you want to do. Of course, the challenge and the issue in using these attribution solutions is actually the first bit of data that we can get from AppsFlyer or Tune or whatever it is a lot further down the line than picking up your phone, going to a website, and being tracked by a tracking pixel. As the speaker was saying a little bit earlier, you know, it's a longer and more complicated process, right? So you see, so one of our clients is Rovio. We run TV campaigns for Angry Birds in the UK and the US. You know, for us to be able to track and match that organic install back to that TV spot, what do they have to do? They have to see the Angry Birds ad. They have to pick up their phone or their tablet, open up the App Store, look for Angry Birds, have a look at the app download page, maybe check out the ratings, install the app. We still haven't got any data at this point. We have to wait for the app to be open for the first time for the first bit of what we need, which is the time-stamped organic install data to fire to our TV solution. So rather than seeing this big spike that you get from web campaigns and web tracking and attribution, what you see is a lot flatter and a lot more difficult to actually identify down to the TV spot itself where the installs have come from. So this just kind of explains what I've just said, really. So this is, in our advanced analytics platform, the top graphic there is an ideal scenario as to how an app install campaign would look in terms of to-the-second tracking. Realistically speaking, that's quite rare because of the process that people have to go through. And also, you know, just in terms of user behavior, if you're going to, I'll give you an example. One of our clients is Clash of Kings, the big game out of Beijing for Elex. And we ran a huge campaign for them in the UK, and we bought the whole of the first ad break in the first episode of the last series of Game of Thrones. Cost us quite a lot of money, but we were really excited about it because the audience was absolutely perfect. You know, I was that keen. I was kind of looking at my advanced dashboard as the ad went out, and our attribution window was 6-7 minutes. Attribution window finished, 0 installs. I just thought, we've absolutely, you know, made a right mess of this. And then once the program finished, 60 minutes later, huge spike in installs. So obviously what had happened was people had, to a degree, downloaded the app when they saw the ad at the first ad break, but rather than breaking off from this program that they probably waited a year to watch to start playing the game, they waited until the game finished before they installed it, before they opened it for the first time. And of course, it's only at that point of opening it for the first time do we get that data. So we have to be a little bit more open-minded. And what we do instead is look at what we call eCPI rather than attributed CPI. So a better picture of TV influence actually can be gained by looking at an organic daily uplift. So it's great to be able to look at individual spots and identify individual things, but it's much more useful and valuable to look at the effect that TV has had over a period of 24 hours. And it's, of course, really important at this point that we understand the other factors that influence organic success. We can't claim that every additional and incremental organic install has come as a result of our TV campaign if there's a featuring in the App Store or if there's a big chart boosting activity going on. Chart position, App Store promotion, emails, PR, CRM, whatever else is going on, all has to be taken into account, and we have to be able to effectively establish a baseline of organic installs working with the client before we can look to prove or disprove any uplift in terms of TV. And once all of those things are known, an eCPI can be formulated. So this is an example of a big campaign that we did in the UK for a very, very well-known mainstream gaming brand, whereby if we'd have just looked at that attributed CPI, so these are the ones that actually all took place from seeing the ad to installing it to open it for the first time within the 5 or 6 minute window, then the CPI would have been eye-wateringly high. But actually, when we were able to look at the effect stretched out over the whole day, it was a much, much better picture. And of course, another way of looking at this kind of stuff is through App Store itself. So for this same campaign, we were very fortunate, not only because the brand was very, very well known, and people reacted very well to seeing it on TV for the first time in a long time, but the client also kind of parked all of their major digital marketing and acquisition to kind of clear the way a little bit for TV. And what we saw was these are the App Store, obviously in the UK, with the light blue line being the overall chart position. What we saw was when the campaign launched, there was an absolutely immediate effect on an hour-by-hour and day-by-day basis in terms of app installs. And then when we went off air, it dipped again. So this kind of saved us a little bit for this campaign, because when we were just looking at the attributed cost per install, the picture didn't look too great. But when we were able to look at the App Store itself, and this is the Google Play App Store for that game, the effect on TV was absolutely undeniable. So it just taught us to look a little bit in a bit more of a broader context as to the effect that TV was having. So another thing we can do is measure reactivation. So similar principles for acquisition: establish an organic baseline, i.e. what is going on before TV starts to happen, before you can really measure any kind of uplift. What we do here is really quite easy. We look at an average number of DAUs over a period of time, and then look to, rather than installs, and then look to see what the uplift is. We can't do spot-by-spot analysis here because obviously you don't have that time-stamped data that we're getting from the installs, so you're not able to match reactivation necessarily back unless you have your in-app attribution provider set up to do something like this, in which case you can. But what it can do is it can help us optimize media buying by day. So, the assumption, of course, is that the weekend ads would be better in terms of reactivation because people have more time to play them. But using this kind of thing, we'll be able to prove that once and for all. But all of this in-app organic data is only valuable if you use it, right? Otherwise, it's just kind of, it's informing you of how people are using your game, but it's not helping you with your actual TV campaign. What you need to do is to have confidence in TV, is to be able to approach it from a mobile-first perspective. And the combination of the analytics, the tracking, and the flexible approach to TV buying is the optimum one that you want. But there aren't many TV agencies out there that do it like this because this methodology doesn't suit the model. OK, so to summarize, we believe that the traditional way of using TV is not fit for purpose for progressive, ambitious, modern app publishers. Just ensuring that your ad is seen by loads of people isn't really enough. It's OK if your machine's own and you want to put an ad in the Super Bowl because that has lots of other benefits around it. But if you're interested in performance-based metric, it's not enough. Mobile-focused TV campaigns can now start to be judged in terms of mobile language and in terms of mobile performance metrics. And as always, the solution is in the data. You just got to know where to find it. And that's it. Thank you very much.